So before we get started tonight, I have just a little announcement to make. We're interrupting your
Please.
presentation. So I'm Glenda Ziski from Modern Woodman, and as a patronal for Modern Woodman, we pick a hometown hero every year, and for each of our groups. And this year, from our Marshall chapter,
You just have to turn it down.
we are presenting it to you, Bill Palmer, as the Modern Woodman Hometown Hero Award this year. And I have different glasses now. With appreciation, Modern Woodman recognizes Bill Palmer. You believe in volunteer service, and so do we. As a fraternal financial service organization dedicated to improving the quality of life for families and communities, we recognize your accomplishments and appreciate your contribution to your community. You are truly a hometown hero. Pablo, we're going to let Jen, did you get pictures of them?
Yeah, let me get one of you both looking at me. And Bill, I've kept this a secret for quite a while. You didn't know anything?
I wasn't, oh.
Okay.
That's very special.
And
Thank you so much.
yes, and along with this, you get to choose an organization, nonprofit, that you can give a $100 donation to.
I have one in mind. I have one in mind.
Okay, so you can let me know what that would be.
The Lyon County Historical Society.
Okay, and then this is also, we were gonna present this to you at the fair, so there's some food coupons too for local businesses.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I'm humbled, and I want to say right away that this is not just about me. What I do is a very collaborative thing. I work with great colleagues here at the museum. I work with great people, the veterans that I work with, and they entrust their important experiences with me, and I take that very seriously. So this is very special. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that threw me off base here. But welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening, investing some of your time in one of our local veterans. And my name is Bill Palmer, which you've heard already. But I work with the Lyon County Historical Society. I'm on the board. And we've worked with a number of Vietnam veterans, and it sort of grew out of the exhibit downstairs about the impact of the Vietnam War on our regional community. And so this evening I'm very pleased to introduce to you Karl Porisch. Many of you may know Karl, but I don't know if you knew that he was a Marine when he served in Vietnam. And because I suspected he'd be wearing Marine colors today, I had to put on some Army colors just to counteract that. But we're very pleased to have Karl with us this evening. And Karl and I both want you all to know that at any point during the presentation, if you have a question or want to share an observation, just shoot a hand up. You're not interrupting him or me. You're helping him share his experiences. And with that, Karl, grab your mic there. And remember, what was my guidance about the mic all night?
Yeah, tasting. 1, 2, 3,
There you
tasting.
go. Eating the mic works. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Karl Porisch.
Okay, the beginning as a young man. I actually grew up in Jackson, Minnesota, which is about 90 miles southeast of here. And those are the 4 boys in our family. And I just got back from Wisconsin golfing with them. So we get together once a year to golf and tell stories and have a good time.
How many of the stories are true, Karl?
Yeah, well, there's some fibs told, I suppose. But I did. I graduated from Jackson in 1963, and I think the same year that Ray graduated from Marshall here. And after that, well, after I graduated, I went and played football at Waldorf Junior College in Forest City, Iowa for 2 years. And then I transferred to Mankato State. And the reason I did, because I had enough credits in biology for a major and enough credits in chemistry for a minor. So that's what I pursued at Mankato State. And that's a picture of Old Main. And the story is I was in a human anatomy lab, and we took a break. It was a 3-hour lab, and so we took a break, went across to Old Main, walked up the steps, and here's the Marine Corps with a table, recruiters there. And they had no helicopters, by the way. It was all jets. They wanted people to fly jets, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe that was an attention getter. So I visited with them, told them I'd really like to fly, and they said, well, if you can pass all the tests, by George, we'll send you to flight school. And they did. Quick trip up to the cities, took the exams, passed them, and signed my name for 4 years. And then, because I was a junior in college then, I went to OCS in Quantico, Virginia, and that was a 10-week course. And that's the platoon that I was in, and we did. It was all people that were in college, and were going to be getting a degree to become an officer in the Marine Corps. And so I haven't told this story to many, but when I got back, I did not graduate in time that the Marine Corps wanted me to graduate at Mankato, so they disenrolled me from the program. And about 3 weeks later, I get the draft notice from Jackson County, my personal friends. Well, I didn't want to be drafted. I wanted to have some say-so on what I did, so I signed up again to go through the platoon leaders class. That was another 10-week course in Quantico, so actually I wound up being twice the officer as anyone else, okay? But the advantage was I knew all the games the Marine Corps were playing and stuff. So this is a picture of when we qualified on the range. We qualified with the M14, and that was the predecessor to the M16 that the military used. I think they probably had them in Vietnam for a while, but then changed over to the M16. And of course, we had close order drill and. Interesting thing that we had a contest at the end of the 10 weeks, and for whatever reason, the platoon sergeant picked me to be the drill master for the contest, because all of the whole company we were in had a contest. Who could drill best? By George, we won. So that was kind of a thrill. The hill trail. We heard rumors about that before going there. You know, we had. Every week we'd go on a 3-mile hike with full equipment, backpack, the M14, steel pot, and a backpack full of stuff. And they called it the hill trail. Well, so nobody had been on that before, and so we start out on the hill trail, and the first one was, I'm thinking, no sweat here, this isn't much, you know. So we get over the top of the hill and we go down into the valley. Well, here's the second hill. Now that's a little steeper. And I'm kind of huffing and puffing at the top of that one. We go a little ways down in a deeper valley and we come to hill number 3. And I mean, that was almost like climbing a ladder. And that's when guys started dropping out. I made it to the top, but that was the infamous hill trail. And everybody I've talked to that's gone through Marine or OCS talks about the hill trail. It made a real impression on people. So after that course, then we went to officer's basic course, which was still in Quantico, and that was another let's see, I want to say that was 16 weeks, I think. Or no, 10 weeks. That was another 10 weeks. And in that we did we studied all kinds of the tactics that the Marine Corps used, both squad and platoon and company. And we used all of the weapons that the platoon would use. Bazookas, or the rocket launchers, mortars, all that stuff. We did that. And then once you graduated, you were given a commission as a second lieutenant. And then I had the first physical I took, I passed the hearing test. And so when I was getting ready to graduate, I had to take the test again and failed it. So I couldn't be a pilot. And I thought, bummer, it's not why I joined the Marine Corps. So, and then that goes into going through OCS twice. Well, this friend of mine, right there, Chip Peralt, he was my bunk, slept in the bunk above me, or no, he was in the room at Quantico in the basic school. And so he said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't want to be a rifle platoon commander. And that's what they were really training everybody to do. And so I told him a story about the hearing test, and he said, well, he said, I think I have a fix for that. So we signed up to take the hearing test again. We go to the main base, they put us in this van, and it's just curtains between the places where the hearing thing was. So Chip was in the place next to me, and he put his foot on top of mine, and when he heard the beep in the thing, he pressed on my foot, and then I pressed the button. So I passed the test in a way, and then qualified for the aviation part of it. So, and then at that point, most pilots, or most Marine Corps people that were going to be pilots were sent to Pensacola, Florida. And in Pensacola, they had basic training, and then they had advanced training, and then it split. You could either go jets or you could go helicopters. Well, because of the attrition rate in Vietnam, Pensacola couldn't train enough pilots. And so the Army said, well, we'll train a bunch of us for us. And so we said, fine, that's good, but they paid us per diem. And so that was kind of a little monetary incentive. So I went to Army Flight School in Fort Walters, Texas, where we learned to fly just helicopters. And it was an 18-week course, 2 weeks of ground school, where weather, that type of thing. And then we started flying. And the first one I flew in was the TH-55. It's just a two-seater. I sat, we had civilian flight instructors, and they would sit on the left side of the helicopter, and we sat right here as the trainee. And it was a fun helicopter to fly. It was pretty powerful. It had a pretty powerful engine, and we did. What we did is they had the students. They would take us from the main base to a stage field, and we would take a bus. And so there were 3 students per instructor. And the first student would fly out to the stage field, fly for, I think it was an hour. They'd do things at the stage field. And then the middle guy would get in with the instructor and fly, and the third guy would get in with him, and then he flew back to the main heliport with them. So that's how we got our flight training. But it was fun if you were sitting there watching these guys try to learn how to fly. You could tell they'd be hovering, and pretty soon they'd be doing this and going all over the place, and then all of a sudden they'd stop. Well, that's when the instructor took over. So, but then they expected you after a minimum of 10 hours to solo. And so I don't have a picture of it, I have a picture of it, but we didn't include it here. Once you soloed, the bus would stop at the hotel or the motel in Fort Walters, Texas, and everybody would take you to the swimming pool and then throw you in the pool. Those that soloed that day got a wet drive, so.
Karl,
Yeah.
what were these Monday
Oh.
safety briefings about?
Well, I don't know if any of you can remember in high school, they used to show these driving things. It was called Signal 55, I think. And it was Ohio State Patrol to show you these gruesome pictures of accidents, right? Well, the Army decided to do that too. So Monday mornings on a TV set, because we were in the classroom, on the TVs, they'd have the Monday safety briefing, and they would go over every accident that happened the previous week. And there were some pretty nasty pictures, you know, that happened. Guys didn't survive them and stuff. So it was kind of a Monday morning wake up. And then after 18 weeks there, they actually split the class. The Marines, there were nine Marines in my class. And the Marines all went to Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, Georgia, and the rest of them went to Rucker in Alabama. And so then it was a 16-week course. And the first thing we did was fly in the OH-13 Sioux. And that's one, if you remember, what was the name of that TV show? Yeah, that's the same helicopter. But what they did, we were learning to fly instruments. By instruments. And so this picture doesn't show it, but the cockpit on where I sat here was all black. It's painted black so you couldn't see outside the helicopter. And then they made you wear a hood over your, in the helmet. They put a hood on you so all you could see was the instrument panel. And then we would, the instructor would give us, go ahead. The instructor would give us a flight plan. And we had to we would use just the ADF radio, automatic direction finder. And that would point, and we'd fly at a certain altitude and go to that radio beacon and then another one. And that's what we did for, oh gosh, I don't know, probably 4 weeks. And then after that, then we got to go to the Huey, and that was the main helicopter that the Army used in Vietnam. And they had them. That's really a good depiction of it. They were painted orange, and so other aircraft could say that there was a student pilot in there and steer clear. So that was when we got done with that. We got our Army flight wings, which is a picture down there. And then I had a month off because at that point, my wife then was pregnant with our first son, Chris. And so they gave us 30 days maternal leave. And then I went back to, and that was when then I got orders to Savannah, Georgia, Hunter Army Airfield. And that was the advanced flight school. And so this was a picture of our officer class, and you can see the difference. There's the Marines had a different kind of a flight suit. It's like this one here. Royal brought this one. It's a one-piece fire retardant Nomex suit, and you can see there were 9 of us. And you can tell the hats are a little different and the suits are a little different. And that's myself there. So once we were done with the training there, I went back to the Marine Corps in Tustin, California. And there was, you can see in the background there, it was a World War II blimp base. And one of them just recently burned here a couple, 3 years ago. There were 2 of them, one here and then one over in here. And every once in a while, Goodyear would come down on a weekend and they'd open up those hangar doors and fly their balloons in there to do some maintenance on them and stuff. But that's where I took my training in the one that I would fly, the CH-46. And it was a 16-week course. And you can see it's got 2 main rotors, one forward and one aft, and a tricycle landing gear. It's just got the the nose, the wheel in front which steers. And so that was interesting to learn how to steer that. We'd go out up into the hills. It was called the Prado Dam, and it was this huge, well, it looked like this did, only it was a dam. There was no water there, it was just a spillway. And that's how we'd practice steering the 46, because it was spring-loaded to the front, and if you put weight on it, and you put a little left cyclic in it, the wheels would turn, and then so you learned how to do that. And after that, then I was awarded the Navy wings, and then that was in HMMT 302, which was a training squadron, and then we went to a HMM 265. HMM stands for Helicopter Marine Medium, and there's HML, which is light, and that's the Hueys or gunships, and heavies, which was the CH-53. And so that was a real a Fleet Marine Force squadron. And all the pilots there had just been back from Vietnam, and that's why they wanted us to be in that squadron, to learn what they learned from those guys that had just gotten back from Vietnam, what kind of flying we'd be doing and what kind of dishes and stuff. So then, the story is, they kept telling us, because this was like in 1970, and the word was that they were not sending any more pilots into Vietnam. And so I told my then wife, nope, I'm not going to be going to Vietnam. I told Mom and Dad that. And so we leave, we fly from California to Okinawa. And we get to Okinawa, and there were quite a few Marines, not all pilots. There were 10 of us that were pilots that went to the morning briefing. And so they read off our names first, and they said, your orders have been changed. Well, I looked at my good friend Al Jacobson, and I said, well, I guess we're going to Iwakuni, Japan. And he said, yeah, I guess that's where we're going. So they said, come back at 1300 or 1 o'clock. So we come back, and we walk up, we walk through the line and go to this corporal, and he's got your orders there, and I look at him, and I said, boy, I said, are we going to Iwakuni, Japan? And he takes out his stamp, bam, he stamps the orders, and it said, 1st Marine Aircraft Wing, 1st Marine Aircraft Wing, Da Nang. I'm going, Da Nang? Yes, sir, you're going to Vietnam. I'm going, oh my. So, you can see there what that blew everything that I told my spouse and parents. And so we went to Norton Air Force Base, jumped on an American Airlines to Da Nang. Well, we flew to Hawaii, refueled, and then went to Da Nang. So when I got to Da Nang, we had, up there, that's where it is in northern, it was in I Corps. And when we got there, we were, the first thing that struck me, and that's like every Vietnam vet that's come back, the two things they remember most first is the horrible heat that was there and the odor. There's no way to describe how Vietnam smells. And it kind of hits you in the face when you get off the air-conditioned aircraft. So they took us to the incoming processing center, and then we got our orders. We got on a 6x, which is a big truck, and it had 250 calibers mounted on the front of it. I go, where are they taking us, So we go through downtown Da Nang, and then out a place called Dog Patch, which was really eye-opening. It's the most shabby shanty place I've ever seen where people would live. And so we finally got to Marble Mountain Air Facility, where I was stationed then for the time I was in Vietnam. And that's the picture on the left there is that's the facility, and it had one runway, and our flight line was over here, but our quarters, I lived over here on this side. So we had a duty driver every day that would come every so often and pick us up and take us around here to do the flying. And the first thing we did when we got there is go get your flight equipment, and that's, if you see the helmet here, it was white when it left the States, but by the time it went to the Paraloft and we got it, they put it black, painted it black. And I said, why'd you do that? He said, well, a black helmet is harder to see than a white one when you're being shot at. So anyway, that's, we got there. And then the rule was that you had to spend 5 days to get acclimated that you're in Vietnam. Get over the shock of being there, get kind of acclimated to the climate and stuff. And so we got our quarters. It was a Southeast Asian hut. A little later on, you'll see a picture of that. And we are assigned to HMM 263. And the quarters, that's the hooch that we lived in, right there. We paid some Vietnamese workers to put up sandbags. There were no sandbags around this. And while I was there, I think we had 3 rocket attacks. Fortunately, most of the rockets landed over on the west side of the airfield. I guess they weren't very good aimers on where they wanted to send them. But anyway, so that was where the 4 of us, there was my good friend Al Jacobson, where I were in the middle section. The other friend I'd gone through OCS with in basic school, Jim Martin, was in front, and then Bob Myers was in the back. And you can see this. This isn't one that was by us. Ours was kind of back in there, but it's a sandbag thing. If they're rocket attack, that's where you'd go, and hope that it didn't hit directly to you. And this little guy, he was kind of our squadron mascot for a while. He hung around the place, and of course, guys are feeding him and stuff. And it was fun to have a dog there. So the latrines, we were kind of spoiled. We had the latrines had showers, hot waters, and regular toilets and urinals and things. And then the mess hall and the club. The mess hall was where we went for our meals, of course. And then the club was just a walk through a short hallway, and then you could go in there and have drinks. And then, keeping it clean. We had an industrial relations officer, and so what they did was they hired Vietnamese women to come in and take care of the hooch, because we were gone all the time. And so they paid them not very much money, but they'd come in and sweep out, because it was sand everywhere, and they keep the place clean and wash our clothes and do those types of things. But the maid we had, or the woman we had, her name was Missy Mai, and she was about 45 years old, spoke 3 languages, French, English, and Vietnamese. And she was kind of what they called the head snake. She was the oldest one. And so all the rest of them that were cleaning would come to our hooch and have their lunch, and man, did it stink. They had this, it's called Nook Mom. It was a fish sauce of some kind. But it would smell. We had to open up all the sides of the thing and turn the fans on to clear it out. So then the operations, like I said, we were in I-Corps, and essentially, here's, Da Nang is right here. And I only went twice, did we go up to Hue and then up to, I never got as far as Dong Quang Tri. Phu Bai is in there somewhere, but I don't see it on the map. Oh, there's Phu Bai, yep. We got up there a couple times doing that, but most of our operations were in and around Da Nang. The Hai Van Pass, which is right there, we would not much get past that. And there was a place out in here called Elephant Valley. It was a beautiful place, just beautiful. And I think at one time they say, well, there used to be elephants there, and that's why they call it Elephant Valley. But I think when the war started, they got smart and went somewhere else. And so we'd get out here. There was that was Oshawa there. The furthest west I got, and I can't tell you for sure if that's Laos. And I think we were out here looking for a prisoner of war camp, and we were flying people back and forth, you know, in support of that operation. But they never found it. But I can't tell you that I didn't maybe get into Laos or Cambodia. So anyway, but most of what we did was right around here, and we got down to Chu Lai once. There used to be a Marine aircraft station there, but then they moved everything up to Da Nang. So this spot here where all the red marks are, that's where we spent a lot of time. That was the Kwe San Mountains, and the VC and the North Vietnamese owned that. After the war, they found a full hospital buried underneath that mountain, under those mountains. And so there was lots of operations going on, flight in and out of there.
Karl, could you
Yeah.
briefly describe what was your unit mission, Peach Bush?
It was what?
What was your mission?
Oh, the
Peach Bush
missions.
262.
Well, the 46, as you can see here down here, we could haul 25 fully loaded combat troops. We could put and you'll see a picture of the interior here at some point. But they put the seats up. You could put a Jeep and a trailer in there if you had to haul that out in the field for somebody. But we had a lot of missions. What the biggest one we flew most commonly was resupply. And in the 46, underneath the belly, there's a hook that's hangs on the frame of the helicopter. And we would go over to the resupply point, and they'd put all this gear in a net. And then we would hover over the net and pick it up and then fly it out into the field. And we got them food, ammunition, that type of stuff. We did that a lot. The other missions were when they would do a troop insert on a strike or take troops out of the field, we would fly to that. There were two that were more dangerous than the others. One was called Mission 80, and what that was, it was kind of boring because it was a standby mission. It was for, we had 2 helicopters, and we didn't fly unless somebody in the field got in trouble. Some platoon maybe got surrounded or something like that, needed to be extracted. Well, then we'd respond and fly out there and take them out. And then the other one that was fairly dangerous was Mission 73. And that was where we took recon teams out into the field, and I mean out into the field, or went in and picked them up for the return back, or if they got under fire and we had to go in and pick them up. And then there were what we called ash and trash, was just taking stuff, maybe moving some people around in the field, and I don't know. Guys going on R&R needed a flight someplace, so we'd do that. And the 46 was, the gross max weight on that was 23,500 pounds. And that's with fuel and the max, crew, and then is what the max you could put in there for the balance of that for equipment. Yeah, Bill.
Karl, what was a standard crew?
Oh, the standard crew.
46.
We had a pilot and a co-pilot, a crew chief, and then we had 2 temporary assigned duty gunners. And the 46 was equipped with 250 caliber machine guns. There's one on this side, and then you can't see on the others, but there's another one on the other side. So there were 5 of us in the helicopter at all times, or when we were flying. And so here you can see the top photo there is how we stored them in the revetments. Those are 50-gallon drums that are filled with sand, and we put them in there like if there was a rocket attack, hopefully the shrapnel would hit the side and not the helicopter, the sand thing. And the maintenance you can see down below, that's one that's being towed. It's been having some work on. done on it. The aft, these are what they call the clamshells. They would open those up. And when we did pre-flights, co-pilot would do the pre-flight. Those were open because there were some controls in here that we needed to look at, and we inspected the main rotor hub every time we flew, that one and the one in front. And so this one probably was being towed out to fly and waiting for a pre-check. And then this was the operations desk. Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you usually get the same helicopter every time?
No. We had, I think we had like 15 was our TO&E. And the crew chief was assigned a helicopter. And they worked on the same helicopter all the time. And we really relied on that crew chief, to know what maybe had been a problem and what kind of work they'd been doing on them. But no, we had 15, and it was just whatever birds were up for the day that we were going to fly, the maintenance would assign, one of them for us to fly. And so the desk on the lower left there, the guy standing by the board, that was my roommate, Al Jacobson. And so I flew, most of the time if I flew, it was at least 5 or 6 times a week. And the 7th day, then I was assigned to the operations desk, and I would write the flight schedule for the next day. And we'd get that flight, we'd get a place over in Da Nang called the Da Nang Air Support Center. They would send down the frag orders of units in the field that needed help, and we'd get those about by 10 o'clock at night. And so I'd write the flight schedule for everybody. And if it was night medevac, I failed to remember, the other one was night medevac. That was not a very fun thing to do. And if you didn't fly night medevac until everybody else in the squadron had flown it. And so by 10:30, quarter to 11, then the duty driver would deliver the flight schedule to all the pilots in the squadron. And then the desk there was where we had the radios, and we kept track of all the helicopters that were out in the field, and anything that came up, that's where people would come to ask questions. And so the pre-flights, what we did, that was a co-pilot's job. Once we got our flight briefing from the pilot, then we'd go out to the helicopter, pre-flight it, along with the crew chief, and then the pilot would come out, we'd start, and then take off for what mission we were going to have. And the 46 had these what they called stub wings, and those were actual fuel cells. There's one on each side, and they held 800 pounds of fuel on each side, and so that would let us. They weren't very gas or fuel efficient because we could fly for about 2.5 hours, and then we had to come back and fill up with fuel. And that's what we're doing here. Though there's fuel bladders, you can't see them off on the side, but what we do is we taxi into there. We wouldn't shut down. Crew chief would jump out, and he would take the fuel holes, plug it into the side of the helicopter, and it would take turn the pumps on, and in about 5 minutes we were full and ready to go again. And so then we continue on our mission. And then after the mission, the pilot had to fill out paperwork as far as if there was anything wrong with the helicopter, then they'd write it up on a -10, a maintenance manual, or a little folder that was in the helicopter. And he would take care of that. But the co-pilot, when we were flying, if we went into any unsecure landing zones, we had the map, like I have over here, and then we had to put a 6-digit coordinate on our of where we were. And so when we got back to the ready room, the co-pilot had to fill out all the places that we had been and how many people were on the helicopter and that type of thing. And then the crew chief, of course, if there were any gripes about things that had gone wrong or things we thought, either avionics, radios, that type of thing, then they would They would look at that, and then it would go back. Most of them did their work in the revetments. If it was enough, it was like a 7-day check. Well, they had to pull it into a hangar and go through the whole thing. So, and there's the interior of the 46 with the seats down. If we were carrying any kind of cargo, the seats would fold up and they could make room for what they were in the bottom. But my first mission in October was in the monsoon season. And I can't tell you what a downpour was in Vietnam. It was just like somebody opened a floodgate. Well, anyway, the monsoon was around and there were lots of villages that were being flooded. And so I was supposed, or Jake and I, were supposed to be there 5 days before we flew. Well, it'd been only another 4 days. We got a bang on the door about 5 o'clock on the 4th day and said we got to go fly, and that's what we did. And so, oddly enough, the 263 had a white top helicopter, a VIP helicopter in Vietnam. I couldn't believe it, but they did. And so our mission was, we flew over to he was a general, Keith McCutcheon. And he wanted to be taken out into the field and see where all these villages were being flooded and what units in the Marine Corps were moving them. So we land over there. He gets on the helicopter and his aide, who was a major, said, "Lieutenant Porisch, you get to sit in the back." Well, the general wanted to sit in the co-pilot seat. So I was hoping that my pilot buddy that was flying didn't get shot, because I don't think the general knew how to fly. But he wanted to know where his troops were and everything else. So that's what we did. We for the whole day, we'd go to a village that was going to be flooded, put as many women and kids as we could get on the plane, and take them to higher ground and stuff. And then later that day, there was a plane down at LZ Baldy, which was a fire support base, south, probably maybe 20, 30 kilometers south of Da Nang. We had to go down there to pick up, they needed some rotor, somebody had run, rotors hit a tree and they needed to replace the rotor blades. So, thoughts that night. That was the first chance I had to actually call home. And so, one thing the first time we flew out at night, with my other roommate, Rob Myers, I didn't realize what black was. There was no moon, and so there's no horizon. And I mean, it's black. And so we were pretty much trying to fly on instruments. And we flew down to Baldy. We brought them new blades, they rechanged them, and then flew back. So one of the things, like I mentioned, one of our we flew both day and night medevac missions. And like I said, anybody that flew medevac wouldn't fly it again until everyone else had flown it. And so the crew, the regular crew was, we still had 5 crew, but we'd either have a flight surgeon, which was he was a Navy doctor, or a corpsman, a Navy corpsman that would go along with us when we did the medevacs. And there were 3 kinds of medevacs. There was a regular one, emergency, or permanent routine. And regular ones, just regular ones, somebody, I don't know, they were sick or they weren't really hurt. They weren't, if they didn't get airlifted out, they weren't gonna, there was no life danger. But emergency medevacs were, if they didn't get out of the field, they were gonna die. And so then those we would really make an effort to get in there. And when we did that, we had 2 Cobras or 2 gunships that would go out to the LZ, find the LZ where they needed to be evacuated from, and then we would go in, pick them up, and fly back. And then once the wounded individual was on the aircraft, either the corpsman or their flight surgeon would make a decision where they were going to go to get medical attention. And so there were 3 places we took them. The 95th evac was a was a Navy hospital. That was right in Da Nang. First Med was a Navy hospital, and that was right in Da Nang. And the third one was the USS Sanctuary, which was almost always in the Da Nang harbor. And so we would land, this is just, I took this shot when we were kind of on short final, to land on that mark there, the pad in the back. And that was normally, I think that was where they took them if they had head wounds. I think they had neurosurgeons on board there and stuff, so.
You've already talked about that one.
Yeah. And then, like I mentioned before, there was Mission 80. A lot of times it was just, we had a ping pong table in the ready room, we played ping pong, waiting if there was a mission. And then the other game we played was AC Doocy, and it was a Navy version of, what's the one, the dice, I can't think of the name of it, huh?
Yahtzee?
Yeah, yep. And so if they were in trouble, we'd get the mission brief, of course, and crank up and go out there with the gunships. And almost every time we got on that mission, they were hot. So if we were going into the LZ, we were being shot at. And the first time I did that, that's a cockpit of the 46, by the way. And I sat on the left side, yeah. That's where the co-pilot sat. The pilot sat on the right side. And there were dual instruments. The pilot had the same instruments for flight as the one on the left. So if one was either got vertigo or was shot or something, the other person could fly. And so,
Carl?
yeah,
While we're talking about the pilot and the co-pilot's
Yep.
positions, could you describe how they were protected in the
Oh.
cockpit?
yeah, this isn't a very good picture of it, but right here, both pilots sat in this, it was armor-plated seat, so it was on both, and they had wings that kind of came out about this far, so, if you were shot at, you were somewhat protected. They didn't at first, but later on, they put armor plating behind here, because otherwise, pilots were being shot, the bullets had come through and hit them, and there was nothing to stop it. So they put armor plate behind here. That helped. And then we always, when we flew, we had what we called a bullet bouncer, and it was the front plate of a protector. And the back we didn't need, so we'd put that down in the chin bubble. And you can't see it there, but the back plate was down in there so that if somebody was shooting up at you, that would kind of protect you. And that's a picture of the 50 caliber machine gun. And like I said, we had 2 of those. And the first time, the co-pilot seat, this isn't an exact picture, but the 50s all had stops on them. Because they didn't want to shoot too far forward or you'd hit the helicopter. Well, the first time I went in, they were shooting the barrels like right here. And I have that helmet on with earplugs on it. And he opens up with that 50 cal. It was like I didn't have any hearing aids in there, or earplugs. So they're very loud. They would knock down small trees. You could see it in the LZ, they'd tip over. So, well, as a pilot, I could probably talk about vertigo. And vertigo is when you lose all spatial recognition of what you're doing, turning, climbing, and everything else. And they always told us there's 2 people about vertigo, those that have had it and those that are going to get it. And so I was flying with Jim Porto down to Baldy at night, dark as the ace of spades, just dark. And first he gets it. Because I noticed that pretty soon airspeed's gone, it got up down to about 60, and I said, I'll take the control, I have the controls. So then I took it, and I flew for a little while, then I got it. I can't imagine what the crew chief and the guys in the back were thinking about 2 guys that couldn't fly this thing at night, But we got it under control. And, but weather was a real, when I first got there, weather was a real problem. There were days we couldn't fly because the ceiling was just too low and visibility where you couldn't see anything. And it was raining, and so we wouldn't fly. But what we did do, this is kind of an interesting picture. There were some LZs that were big enough for us to go in and land in. But some of them, like this one, was like maybe on the edge, and there may have been some trees or something here behind. And so what the pilot did was he kind of backed into that and put the back wheels on the ground, and his nose wheel is out over the edge of the landing zone, and hover there until they could get people. And this looks like they're taking people off. But with was a 50-foot rotor disc diameter. So there were some of them, the landing zones were pretty tight, and you had to be very conscious of that. And that's when you relied on the crew chief. He was really our eyes and ears in the back of the helicopter, and he had a long cord that he could run back and forth and look out in the back and see how we were doing and stuff. So,
Carl, what does this term
oh,
mean?
when you first got to the squadron, you flew as a co-pilot, and they would. Most of them, somebody from operations, probably the S3 officer, would look at it and finally say, well, you've been on day and night medevacs, you've been on all these other missions, so you're ready to take your helicopter aircraft commander check ride. And that's when I said before, pilot and co-pilot. Pilot is the one that was the aircraft commander. And so Major Lee Payton was the one who gave me my hack check. And then once you passed that, then you were responsible for the helicopter. You signed all the maintenance sign-offs. You were the one that made the decision to go or not go, that type of thing. So the mission was all yours, your responsibility.
And that day, you had a mission 7.
Oh.
What is a mission 7?
Mission 7, well, you can see it on here. Just south of Da Nang, where there was the 2nd Korean Marine Brigade. And we supported them every day with a 46 no gunships, because it was just ash and trash type stuff. Take somebody in the field, go back, pick them up, and everything else. So my first mission, because it was supposed to be easy and not hard and not dangerous. So Jim Martin, my roommate, and I went down, we flew down there, picked up a doctor. Somebody must have been, I don't know if they fell or they had a minor wound or something. And so we took him out to this LZ, dropped him off, and then came back. And they said, well, we'll call when he's done. So about an hour later, we get the call. And so Jim and I were taking turns landing and taking off. That was kind of regular procedure. So Jim made the approach in. Doctor got on, the crew chief said, ramp's clear, push the button, the ramp comes up, get into a hover, and we go off over the edge, kind of like this scene right here. When we get over the trees, and the next thing we hear is this horrendous explosion. And it was loud, and it shook the helicopter. And we're going, what on earth is that about? So training kicks in. The first thing you do is do an instrument scan to make sure that everything is flyable. And so everything looked good. Well, we flew back to Marble Mountain, landed, and what we had done is set off some kind of booby trap. And it punctured, we had over 30 holes in the bottom of the helicopter, and it punctured both fuel cells, which were self-sealing, but they were punctured. And it shot out, the 46 has what is called an auxiliary power plant. We called it an APE, auxiliary power plant APE. And there's this little turbine engine there. It's the first thing you started to get electrical systems and hydraulic systems working in the helicopter. And so it shot that out. So we had to do kind of a bass-backwards shutdown procedure because you couldn't use that. Well, so that was later than we found out. Well, we got another helicopter, went back, and finished our mission for the day and came back. So that was one of the scary moments for me and Jim while we were in Vietnam. The other one, we did have one not so comfortable accident. On November 18th, there was a recon team that had been in the field. One of them had fallen and broken his leg. Well, a recon team, if they're not mobile, they can't stay in the field. So our squadron got the mission. I was the operations officer for that day. And it was in the Quai San Mountains, and the weather was terrible. It was overcast and everything, and so this section of 46s go out there to pick these guys up. Well, on the way out, one of them developed a forward transmission problem, so he had to turn back. So Kurt Rogers and Jim Stoltz go into the landing zone, and they did what they called a spy rig extract. You can't, right here is you can kind of see this hook. Well, they would tie it was called a spy rig, SPIE, Special Platoon Insert or Personnel Insert and Extract Strap. And it had D-rings on it. And the recon team would wear a harness, and they had rings on their harness, and they would snap onto that. So they hung from that strap so they could shoot if they had to. Well, Kurt Rogers was the pilot, and he picked it up, and he started to make a pedal turn. He turned and started taking off and flew right into, well, it was cloudy, so he couldn't see, and flew right into the side of the mountain. All 15 people on board were killed, obviously. And the future, there was a lieutenant colonel. I think he was a recon commander. They were grooming him to be commandant of the Marine Corps. Well, he was a fatality. And so, Mission 80 the next day, they went out and they recovered the helicopter and the bodies of the crew and the pilots and stuff. And just because I knew that type of thing would get into the news somehow, I did a telegraph home, both to my parents and to my then wife, that if you see anything in the paper about a helicopter crash in the mountains, that wasn't me. Yeah, and that's what the command, what the telegrams were about. And that was the hooch that we lived in, the four of us, and Jim Martin, Jake and I, and Bob Myers. Well, I've lost track of Jake. I don't know what, he just lives in Wisconsin, but I've lost track of him. Both Bob Myers and Jim Martin are now dead. And so the downtime, the club, which was just off, like I said, a little doorway through from the mess hall, was the club. You could buy a drink in there for 35 cents. And you hung your weapons outside on pegs. You didn't want any weapons in the club. And if you wore your hat in there, and the bartender saw you, he'd ring the bell, and then you got to buy a round for the whole bar. And, of course, they were playing songs, and this Animal songs, we got to get out of this place. I mean, everybody's heard that one, you know. And there was, and the club would close at 10. And if you weren't flying the next day, there was always somebody saying, come on over to our hooch. Well, they made, I think maybe social drinking there might have been alcoholism and at home. But you could buy a quart of Jack Daniels for $3.50. So everybody had a nice shelf of booze. And then Christmas, I should mention too here, both Christmas and Thanksgiving were special days. Not only for those of us that were not in the field, but for both of those holidays. We spent most of the day flying hot food out to every unit we could possibly land at with hot fuel, with turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, the whole 9 yards. And so that's kind of a good feeling, because those are the guys that really needed that stuff. And that's one thing, you know, the whole mission, the whole idea for the 46 was support of the folks in the field. That's why we were there. And we tried to do as best of that as we could. Letters, yeah, we get letters, maybe once or twice a week. But my dad, my brother Mark was a wrestler. He was really pretty good. And so Dad would send me, he was the sportscaster at the wrestling matches, and so he would send me tape recordings of my brother's wrestling matches. So that was fun. And then I did get 7 days of R&R in Hawaii, and that was kind of a bittersweet thing. I mean, it's something I looked forward to spend 7 days, but boy, 7 days goes fast. And when I left, you knew exactly where you're going back to. So, and then this was on 27 March of '71. The first Marine Aircraft Wing was getting, well, at least Marble Mountain was going to be shutting down, because I think it was Nixon started calling the Marines out of the field. I remember the name of the operation was called Keystone Bravo Oriole. I don't know why they named it that, but then all the squadrons started shutting down, and but that was, you can see here, the different types of helicopters we had. That's a Cobra gunship, the 46. That's the CH-53, the heavy haulers, and there's that looks like a Huey and another gunship. This one, and it's hard to tell, the Marine Corps finally, these were on loan from the Army. These were the ones the Marines had. It was a twin engine Cobra, and they brought them over for about the last 2 months of the war to test them in the field and everything else. Felt good flying with those guys.
Karl,
Yeah.
can you share with our attendees what's in the background behind that hangar?
Oh, yeah. Okay, this expanse here is the South China Sea, and you can't see them here, but over in the where our quarters were, they had towers that guys would man at night, in case, because at one point, I think early on, I think the Viet Cong came when Marble Mountain was brand new and attacked from the ocean. And so they damaged a lot of aircraft and killed folks and stuff. So they put up barbed wire fence and stuff out there. And we could go swimming. There was a way to get through it. And if we didn't have to fly and it was a nice day, we could swim. So going home, I was on what they called an advance party. And so we left about, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks or so before the rest of the squadron left. And we took this 6x, but it was covered though, on the left there. It was covered up, it had tarp over it. And we left at, 5 o'clock in the morning for an early flight back to the mainland. Well, halfway there, what happens? Da Nang is under a rocket attack. And there must have been 15 or 20 rockets that were flying in there, going off and everything else. And none of them, fortunately for us, we were far enough south of the airfield, because that's where they were aiming for, was the airfield. And so we got to the airfield. They dropped us off at the in-processing center. We jumped on a bus, and the bus took us down to the 707. It was American Airlines. And the minute we got there, you could hear the engines. They were already going, because about 3 aircraft down was a C-130, what was left of a C-130, because a rocket had hit that. And so we got on the plane, and the minute, wheels up moment, and everybody I've talked to that left Vietnam, and the minute the wheels were up and they were flying away, the place just went nuts. Everybody's hollering and screaming and everything. We made it. So then we stopped at Okinawa, and then the ultimate destination was Norton Air Force Base, where we had to go through customs. And then I got on a flight on to Chicago, where my wife then was waiting with our son Chris. And so the end of it, I finished the Marine Corps with 3 more years in Hawaii. and then decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And so a little while after that, I got into the Army Reserve and flew Hueys out of St. Paul. And I did that until I got promoted to major, and then I couldn't fly anymore. So I just ended my service. Yeah. Oh, question? No? Okay. I think what surprised me most was the frequency of where we flew into to take wounded. You know, I'd look at the pilot or co-pilot and say, weren't we just here 2 weeks ago? Yeah, we were. And it just, at that point, you know, by the time we left, there were only 11 rifle companies left in Vietnam, and they were almost all in Da Nang. And so the war was really winding down, and it just seemed to me like it was kind of a wasted time. And then what I learned about myself was, what I really was thankful for is how well the Marine Corps trained us, or in the Army too as pilots. But the appreciation I had for, I really felt good about helping the guys in the field because they're the ones that needed it. And what I learned about myself was I trusted the people that I flew with, and training kicked in on a number of occasions, and so I felt good. I don't think I ever thought about crashing. Most guys didn't, I don't think, you know, and there were a couple of instances where we came close, but we got through it. Any questions? Yeah.
Did you ever fly the CH-47 that the Army used?
No,
Never
no,
did.
I didn't. That was, yeah,
They were
that
fairly similar, right?
very similar. They're both built by Boeing, Boeing Vertol. The 47, I think, was a larger aircraft.
Right.
The 46 was actually designed to be operated off a landing LPH ship. And with the rotor system here, it had blade fold on it. And so we didn't use it in Vietnam. Well, they did sometimes if they were going to put it in the hangar. But what you would do, there was a procedure. The engines were off, the APU was running, but then you put a rotor brake on. We had a rotor brake to stop them from turning. And then you pushed a certain button, and then the back blades would fold forward over the fuselage, and the forward ones would fold back over the fuselage. And then they put those on a carrier. And so their footprint was just the helicopter. And the 47 was a bigger helicopter. I think they had larger engines in it and stuff and could carry more things.
Anyone else have any questions for Karl or comments? Well, sir, well done.
Good.
Let's say thank you. Now, as you can see, Karl and our colleague Royal Hetland from Minnesota loaded up the table with all kinds of artifacts. There's Karl's snazzy pilot's leather flight jacket there.
Yep.
The young Karl standing there, that's actually your flight uniform, is it not, Karl? That's the uniform.
That's
you
young
wore?
Carl. Well, that's what Royal told me. He said, this is young Carl.
Right. But the uniform.
Oh,
is
yeah,
your
this
uniform.
is the Nomex flight suit. And it had, like for pilots, had lots of pockets in it that you could put like your maps and things on there. And just some items here. That's the helmet I wore in Vietnam. This was our checklist. This is a copy of my pilot's log. All of the, when you were in country and in a combat situation, all the hours were in red. And this was a strobe light. I don't have a battery in it, but you turned it on, it was a strobe. And then this was a pen flare. And there's some other things, checklist and things we used to figure out density, altitude, and how much weight we could carry. And then some of the patches that used to be on this jacket, but when we got back to the States, they made us take off some of the more risque ones. But the map is where we flew out of out of Da Nang. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Please come over to the table, ask Karl more questions. We have treats back there yet, so he'd love to talk with you if you have any questions or comments. And Karl, again, thank you for your service.
You bet. Thank you. So is this the same presentation?